Samuel L. Jackson has been a towering presence in Hollywood for more than 4 decades. His voice alone is enough to make audiences stop and listen. From intense courtroom dramas to explosive action films and global franchises, he became one of the most recognizable actors on the planet. Generations grew up watching him command the screen with confidence, energy, and a kind of fearless attitude that made him seem almost untouchable. To fans, Samuel L. Jackson always felt larger than life. A man who would keep working forever, never slowing down, never fading. But now he is 77. For many fans, that number is hard to process. People still picture him as the intense, sharp-tongued character from classic films or the commanding presence in modern blockbusters. The truth is that life at 77 looks very different from life at 47 or even 57. If you love Samuel L. Jackson and want to understand the real story behind the legend, take a moment to like and subscribe. Because this video isn't about the characters he played. It's about the man himself, what decades in Hollywood have given him, what they may have taken away, and how life feels now compared to what fans expect. Before the fame, before the awards, and long before global recognition, Samuel L. Jackson was simply a young man trying to find his place in the world. His early years were shaped by modest circumstances and a strong sense of determination. Raised primarily by his mother and extended family, he grew up understanding that success would not come easily. There were no industry connections waiting for him. There was no fast track into Hollywood. Everything he would eventually become had to be built step by step. As a young adult, he initially explored different interests, including activism and social issues. Acting wasn't always the obvious path. But once he discovered performance, something clicked. Theater became an outlet, a place where he could channel emotion, intensity, and intelligence into something meaningful. It wasn't glamorous. It didn't pay well. But it gave him purpose. The early years of his career were defined by patience. He appeared in small stage productions, minor film roles, and background performances that barely brought attention. For many actors, that phase is discouraging. For him, it became training. He developed discipline. He learned how to deliver lines with precision. He built a reputation as someone reliable, professional, and fully committed to every role, no matter how small. There were also personal struggles during these years. Like many people trying to establish themselves in demanding environments, he faced challenges that tested his resilience. Yet those experiences shaped the intensity that audiences would later see on screen. They gave him depth. They gave him perspective. They made his eventual success feel earned rather than handed to him. When major opportunities finally began to appear, he was ready. Directors noticed his presence. Fellow actors respected his dedication. Slowly, his roles grew larger and more significant. The industry started to see what he had always known. He had the ability to command attention in a way few actors could. What makes his rise unique is that it didn't happen overnight or at a young age. Many actors achieve fame in their 20s. He reached widespread recognition later than most. That meant he entered stardom with maturity and experience. He understood the value of work. He knew how quickly opportunities could disappear. And once they arrived, he wasn't about to waste them. By the time he became a household name, he had already spent years preparing for that moment. He had built emotional strength and professional discipline. Those qualities would later define his reputation as one of the hardest working actors in Hollywood. He didn't treat success as a finish line. He treated it as the beginning of an even more demanding journey. Looking back now, those early struggles feel important. They created the foundation for everything that followed. They also explain why slowing down later in life can feel so strange for someone like him. When you've spent decades pushing forward, learning to pause can feel unfamiliar. Every long career has a turning point, a moment when everything shifts. For Samuel L. Jackson, that moment came after years of persistence. When the right roles finally appeared, they didn't just elevate his career. They transformed him into one of the most in-demand actors in Hollywood. The sudden rise brought excitement, but it also brought pressure. After decades of waiting for recognition, he found himself working constantly. Scripts arrived one after another. Directors wanted him in their films. Audiences responded to his performances with enthusiasm. It was the kind of success many actors dream of, yet it came with an unspoken expectation. Keep going, keep delivering, never slow down. He embraced that momentum. He worked relentlessly. His schedule filled with film shoots, press tours, and promotional appearances. The industry quickly realized that he could handle intense roles and demanding production schedules. That reliability made him invaluable. Producers knew they could count on him. Audiences knew they would get a memorable performance. But with constant work came exhaustion. The pace of Hollywood doesn't allow much rest, especially for actors in high demand. Long days on set, travel between filming locations, and the mental focus required for complex roles can wear down even the most dedicated professionals. At the time, he was strong, energized, and driven. He could handle it. Still, the seeds of long-term fatigue were planted during those years of nonstop activity. Fame also changed his personal life. Privacy became harder to maintain. Every appearance, every interview, every role contributed to a public image that felt larger than the person himself. Fans saw strength and confidence. They saw a man in control. What they didn't see were the quieter moments, the need for rest, the emotional toll of constant visibility, and the pressure to maintain a certain image. Reaching fame later in life had advantages. He approached success with maturity. He didn't take opportunities for granted. But it also meant he entered the most demanding phase of his career when many people are beginning to slow down. Instead of easing into middle age, he accelerated into global stardom. That acceleration defined the next decades. He became known as one of the most consistently working actors in the business. Film after film, year after year, he remained present. The workload built a legacy, but it also built fatigue that only time would fully reveal. Now, looking back from the perspective of 77, that period of explosive success likely feels both rewarding and overwhelming. It gave him everything he worked for: recognition, financial stability, and a lasting place in film history. But it also set a pace that would be difficult to maintain forever. Fans often remember the breakthrough as the beginning of an unstoppable run. In many ways, it was. Yet every unstoppable run eventually meets reality. Age changes energy levels. Priorities shift. The same drive that once fueled nonstop work must eventually adapt to a different rhythm. The breakthrough that changed everything didn't just create a star. It created a life defined by constant motion. And decades later, learning how to live with less motion can be one of the hardest adjustments of all. One of the most defining aspects of Samuel L. Jackson's career has always been his work ethic. Few actors have appeared in as many films across as many genres. He became known not just for talent, but for consistency. Year after year, audiences could count on seeing him in new roles. That level of productivity is rare, and it requires extraordinary stamina. During the peak decades of his career, his schedule was relentless. Film sets in different countries, long shooting days, late-night rehearsals, and constant travel became normal. While many actors take long breaks between projects, he often moved directly from one film to another. The momentum built his reputation, but it also demanded physical and mental endurance. At the time, he seemed tireless. Interviews showed him energetic and sharp. Co-stars described him as professional and focused. He handled demanding scripts and intense scenes with confidence. The public saw a man who thrived on work. And in many ways, he did. But constant work has long-term effects. Even when someone enjoys their craft, decades of pressure can accumulate. The body absorbs the impact of travel, irregular sleep, and physically demanding scenes. The mind absorbs the stress of performance, expectations, and public attention. Over time, maintaining the same pace becomes harder. As he entered his 70s, the natural changes of aging began to influence how he worked. Energy needed to be managed more carefully. Recovery time became more important. Choosing roles likely required more thought. While he continued to appear on screen, the rhythm inevitably shifted. That shift is something many long-time performers experience. The difference is that for someone known for constant motion, slowing down can feel unfamiliar. There's also the emotional aspect of stepping back. When your identity has been closely tied to productivity, taking fewer roles can feel like losing part of yourself. Fans may not notice the difference immediately. They still see new appearances and assume everything is the same. But internally, the adjustment can be significant. Despite these changes, his legacy remains undeniable. Decades of consistent work created a filmography that spans generations. Younger actors study his performances. Directors still respect his presence. Yet the pace that built that legacy cannot last forever. At 77, balance becomes more important than momentum. For fans, it's easy to assume that someone who worked so consistently will always do so. The reality is more human. Even legends need rest. Even the strongest work ethic must eventually adapt to time. The challenge isn't just physical, it's psychological. Learning to accept a slower rhythm after decades of intensity can be one of the most difficult transitions a person faces. His career built a reputation of strength and endurance. Now, maintaining health and peace may be just as important as maintaining productivity. The world may still see him as unstoppable. But behind the scenes, the effort required to keep going has likely changed. Aging is something everyone experiences, but for public figures, it often happens under a spotlight. Fans see brief appearances, red carpets, or new film roles and assume everything remains the same. What they don't see are the quieter realities of maintaining health in later life. At 77, staying active in a demanding industry requires discipline. Film sets can be physically taxing. Long hours, repeated takes, and travel across time zones take energy. Even when roles are less physically intense than earlier action performances, the routine still demands focus and stamina. For someone who spent decades working at a high pace, adjusting to the body's natural changes can be challenging. Health at this stage of life often involves careful balance. Rest becomes more important. Scheduling must consider recovery time. Nutrition, exercise, and routine medical care play a larger role. These are normal parts of aging, yet for someone in the public eye, they are rarely discussed openly. The public prefers the image of strength and continuity. There is also the emotional side of health. Recognizing limitations can be difficult for anyone who built a career on energy and confidence. Accepting that the body needs more care than before requires patience. It can also create moments of reflection, thinking about how much has been accomplished and how priorities are shifting. That doesn't mean life becomes purely negative or tragic. Many people in their late 70s continue to work, create, and enjoy meaningful moments. But the pace is different. The demands of earlier decades are no longer sustainable in the same way. Finding comfort in a slower rhythm can take time. Public expectations sometimes make this transition harder. Fans want to see the same energy they remember. Studios want reliable performances. Interviews often focus on upcoming projects rather than the realities of aging. Maintaining the image of strength can feel like a responsibility. Behind the scenes, daily life may involve quieter routines. More time at home. More time with family. More attention to rest and well-being. These changes are natural, yet they contrast sharply with the high-energy image many people still hold. For someone who spent decades working non-stop, health becomes the foundation for everything else. Protecting energy, managing stress, and maintaining balance are essential. The goal is no longer just productivity, it's sustainability. Fans may never fully see this side of life. They will continue to celebrate his past roles and look forward to new appearances. But understanding the reality of aging adds depth to that admiration. It reminds us that even the most powerful figures are human. Time affects everyone. At 77, the story isn't just about what he has done. It's about how he lives now, carefully, thoughtfully, and with the awareness that every year carries new challenges. The strength that once fueled non-stop work now supports something different: endurance, reflection, and the ability to keep moving forward, even at a slower pace. From the outside, it's easy to assume that a legendary actor who has appeared in dozens of successful films has nothing to worry about financially. Years of box office success, brand recognition, and consistent work create the image of endless security. But financial reality in later life is often more complex than people imagine. A career in entertainment rarely follows a simple path. Income can fluctuate dramatically from year to year. Some projects pay extraordinarily well. Others offer less but provide creative fulfillment. Even after decades of success, planning for long-term stability remains important. Expenses don't disappear with age. In many cases, they increase. Maintaining multiple homes, supporting family members, and covering long-term costs like healthcare, travel, and staff all require ongoing resources. There are also investments to manage, taxes to plan for, and the responsibility of ensuring that everything is secure for the future. Wealth doesn't eliminate responsibility, it often increases it. Another factor is the changing nature of work. While he continues to appear in films and projects, the frequency and type of roles may shift over time. Older actors sometimes choose fewer roles or select projects that are less physically demanding. That can mean less income from new work compared to earlier decades. Royalties and residuals can provide stability, but they may not fully replace the steady stream of earnings from constant filming. There's also the pressure to maintain a certain public image. Fans expect a legendary actor to live a certain way. The industry expects consistency. Public appearances, events, and travel all carry costs. Even when someone has earned significant wealth, maintaining that lifestyle can feel like an obligation rather than a choice. Financial planning at this stage of life often focuses on sustainability rather than expansion. The goal becomes preserving what has been built rather than chasing more. That shift can be emotionally complex for someone who spent decades working relentlessly. When your career has been defined by productivity, adjusting to a more cautious financial mindset requires discipline. It's important to understand that financial pressure doesn't always mean crisis. Often, it simply means responsibility. Ensuring that family members are secure, that long-term care is covered, and that assets are managed properly takes time and attention. Even wealthy individuals must make careful decisions, especially as they age. There's also a psychological component. Work has long provided not just income but identity. Continuing to take roles can feel like maintaining relevance as much as maintaining financial flow. Stepping back from constant work might create uncertainty, even if resources are stable. The idea of no longer earning at the same pace can feel unfamiliar after decades of success. Fans rarely consider these details. They see the films, the interviews, the appearances. They assume everything is effortless. But behind the scenes, financial life in later years often involves careful planning and quiet responsibility. The goal isn't simply to remain wealthy. It's to remain secure and prepared for whatever the future holds. At 77, financial reality is less about glamour and more about stability. It's about ensuring that decades of hard work continue to support a comfortable life. And while the public may imagine endless abundance, the truth is that even legends must think carefully about the years ahead. Aging is a universal experience, but aging in Hollywood carries unique emotional challenges. The industry is built on youth, energy, and constant reinvention. For actors who have spent decades at the center of attention, watching that focus shift can feel unsettling. For much of his career, Samuel L. Jackson represented strength and authority on screen. He was the commanding figure audiences trusted to lead a scene. Over time, the industry began to change around him. New generations of actors arrived. Trends shifted. Stories evolved. While his legacy remained strong, the environment became different from the one that shaped his peak years. One of the emotional challenges of aging in such an environment is the gradual change in roles. Instead of leading every project, older actors are sometimes offered supporting parts or cameo appearances. While these roles can still be meaningful, they reflect a shift in how the industry views age. Accepting that shift requires emotional adjustment. There is also the question of relevance. When someone has spent decades in the public eye, being relevant becomes part of their identity. Even if the desire to work less grows stronger, the fear of being forgotten can linger. That doesn't mean constant insecurity, but it does create moments of reflection. Questions about legacy, impact, and how one will be remembered naturally arise. The emotional weight of time is also felt through personal reflection. Looking back at a long career brings pride but also nostalgia. There are memories of early struggles, breakthrough moments, and the intense pace of success. There may also be regrets, projects that didn't happen, time missed with family, or opportunities that came at a cost. These reflections are normal in later life, but for someone in the public eye, they often remain private. Another challenge is adjusting to a slower rhythm. After decades of constant work, quiet days can feel unfamiliar. While rest is necessary, it can also create space for thoughts that were once drowned out by activity. Learning to appreciate stillness takes time. It requires redefining what fulfillment looks like outside of constant production. Despite these challenges, there is also strength in longevity. Few actors sustain careers as long and impactful as his. That endurance brings respect from peers and admiration from audiences. Even as the industry evolves, his presence remains significant. Younger actors often look to him as an example of discipline and perseverance. Emotionally, the later years of a career can be a mix of gratitude and adjustment. Gratitude for the opportunities, the recognition, and the life built through work. Adjustment to the reality that time changes everything. For someone who spent decades moving forward without pause, learning to live at a different pace can be both challenging and enlightening. Fans may still see the confident figure they've always admired. But behind that image is a person reflecting on a lifetime of experiences. Aging in Hollywood isn't just about fewer roles or slower schedules. It's about identity, memory, and the effort to find peace with the passage of time. Life at 77 is often defined by routine. After decades of unpredictable schedules and constant travel, routine can feel grounding. Mornings may begin more quietly than they once did. Instead of rushing to early call times on set, there may be time for reflection, reading, or simply enjoying a slower start to the day. Staying active remains important. Maintaining health requires consistency, whether through light exercise, walks, or structured fitness routines. These habits help preserve energy and mobility. They also create a sense of normalcy. For someone who spent years adapting to film schedules, building a personal routine can be both comforting and necessary. Work hasn't disappeared entirely. Appearances, selective roles, and occasional projects still bring him into the public eye. But the pace is different now. Instead of moving from one film to another without pause, projects may be chosen carefully. The focus shifts from quantity to meaning and comfort. Long travel schedules may be limited. Time at home becomes more valuable. Home life often takes center stage in later years. Familiar surroundings, close relationships, and a sense of stability replace the constant motion of earlier decades. There may be more time spent with family, more evenings without public obligations, and more opportunities to enjoy simple moments. These quieter experiences can bring a different kind of satisfaction than the excitement of premieres and filming locations. Public appearances still happen, but they may require more preparation and recovery. Travel can be tiring. Events can be demanding. Maintaining the public image of strength and confidence takes effort. Fans see the final result, a composed appearance, a few interviews, a familiar voice. They rarely see the preparation behind it. There's also the reality of managing energy. In earlier decades, long days were routine. Now, pacing becomes essential. Rest between activities becomes important. Listening to the body's signals becomes a priority. This doesn't mean weakness, it means adaptation. Every stage of life requires different strategies. Emotionally, daily life may involve more reflection than before. Looking back on a long career can bring both pride and nostalgia. There may be moments of gratitude for the opportunities that came, as well as moments of contemplation about what lies ahead. Legacy becomes a more present thought. How will the work be remembered? What impact will remain? Fans often imagine that legendary actors live dramatic lives even in later years. The truth is usually quieter. Daily life may look more like anyone else's. Time at home, occasional work, time with loved ones, and moments of rest. The difference is that decades of public attention never fully disappear. Recognition follows, even in ordinary settings. At 77, living well means balancing activity with rest, public life with private peace. It means appreciating the present while acknowledging the past. The image of constant motion has given way to something more measured. And while that may surprise some fans, it's a natural evolution after a lifetime of relentless work.